The town of Red River was the kind of place where dust clung to boots and whispers clung to reputations. Everyone knew everyone's story, or at least they thought they did. So when a woman arrived one quiet afternoon, stepping off the stagecoach with her hand pressed protectively against her belly, the gossip spread faster than wildfire on the prairie. Her name was Clara, a woman with weary eyes and a spirit that refused to break despite the weight she carried. Not just the child growing inside her, but the shadow of a past that had already judged her in the eyes of strangers. She walked into the saloon not for whiskey, but for a meal, her shoulders stiff as she felt every stare. Some looked with pity, others with scorn, and more than a few with curiosity. A woman alone, carrying another man's baby, in a town that had little room for complicated stories. Clara knew she'd be branded before. She even spoke her name. But then, across the room, she met the steady gaze of a cowboy who didn't look away. His name was Samuel Hart, a rancher whose hands bore the calluses of hard work and whose eyes carried the quiet strength of a man who had weathered storms of his own. Unlike the others, he didn't whisper or smirk. He simply nodded once, like a man acknowledging another human being without judgment. Days passed, and Clara found herself crossing paths with Samuel more often at the general store, near the church, along the dirt road leading to the river. He never asked about her past, never pressed her to explain. Instead, he carried her heavy sack of flour without being asked, fixed the squeaky hinge on the boarding house door she stayed in, and once, when she nearly stumbled on the uneven road, he caught her arm with a gentleness that startled her. She was used to roughness, to suspicion, to the sharp edge of words meant to cut, but Samuel offered none of that. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of fire, Samuel rode up beside her as she walked home from town. "Clara," he said in that calm voice of his, "folks are talkin', but I ain't scared of your past." She froze, her heart pounding. No man had ever spoken such words to her, not without strings attached or a hint of cruelty. She turned, her voice trembling. "You don't know my past. You don't know what I've done. You don't know who this child belongs to." Samuel tipped his hat, his eyes steady as the horizon. "You're right. I don't, and I don't care. What I see is a woman still standing, still fightin', still carrying something worth protectin'. That's all I need to know." For the first time in months, Clara felt the sting of tears she had long kept locked away. In that moment, she realized something she hadn't dared to believe, that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. Maybe she wasn't doomed to be defined only by the mistakes of her past. And maybe this cowboy, with his quiet strength and fearless words, was the beginning of a new chapter she hadn't thought she'd ever see. Clara's heart wrestled between fear and hope. Every step she took forward with, Samuel felt like a step against, the weight of her past pressing down on her. The town still whispered, "She don't deserve him." They muttered, "Or that ain't his baby. What's he thinkin'?" But Samuel didn't flinch. He walked beside her in the market, offered her his hand when she climbed into a wagon, and even stood between her and a group of men whose laughter had carried too far one evening. "You got something to say," Samuel had told them, his voice steel. "You say it to me." They didn't. Clara had lived her whole life bracing for abandonment, expecting people to turn their backs when they saw the truth of her scars. But Samuel didn't turn. If anything, the more she pulled away, the closer he seemed to stand. One night, when the moon cast silver light over the prairie, Clara finally told him the truth. Her voice cracked as she confessed how she had once trusted the wrong man, how promises had turned to betrayal, how she had been left with nothing but a child she hadn't asked for yet, couldn't turn away from. She expected Samuel to look at her differently after that, to let the silence stretch and break what fragile hope she carried. But he didn't. He simply reached over, took her trembling hands in his rough ones, and said, "You think I ain't made mistakes. You think I don't carry my own ghosts. The past don't scare me, Clara. It makes us who we are, but it don't define who we can be." Her tears fell freely then, not of shame but of release, as if his words had unlocked a door inside. Her heart she'd thought was forever sealed, and for the first time in a long while, she laughed, soft and broken at first, but real. From that night forward, Clara began to believe in something she had nearly lost: redemption. Not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her. Samuel's presence gave her strength to face the town, to walk with her head high, to dream that perhaps she could build a future that wasn't chained to the mistakes of her yesterday. In the weeks that followed, Samuel began repairing the old cabin on his ranch, boards creaking under his hammer, smoke curling from the chimney once again. He never said it outright, but Clara understood he was building not just a home, but a promise, a place for her, a place for the child, a place for a new beginning. And as the baby's first kicks stirred within her, Clara knew that maybe the cowboy's words had been true all along. He wasn't scared of her past. He was only invested in their future. And dear listener, as you've followed Clara's journey from shame to strength, from loneliness to hope, remember this: your past does not define you, no matter how heavy it feels. The right people, the right love, the right faith can rewrite your story. And if this tale touched your heart, if it made you believe that hope can rise even from the dust, then I invite you subscribe to this channel. More stories are waiting. Stories that remind us that redemption is real, love is possible, and courage can always light the darkest road.